So now how do we actually make up a code? What are all the elements that make up a code? So you have your symbol width. That's going to be the overall width of the code. The data, when you look here, if I pretend this is my barcode reader, moving my dot across, this is how the data is created, is left to right, right to left on a code. It does have a direction, but depending on the type of reader and what you're using, it usually can handle being in either method. The vertical, the symbol height, is just redundant. So if we think back to that picture before of the tube and what happens when the code is around the tube like we saw, your redundant information is uselessly spread along the length of the top. So you can get the redundant piece very easily, but the part that actually houses the information is curving around the tube. All you would have to do in that application is turn that code 90 degrees, and all of a sudden it's created to do exactly what a 1D code was created to do, which is be able to exist on a surface, and still be readable. So that's what the height's there for, is purely for redundancy. So you can make that as tall as you want, and honestly, you can start to make that pretty thin, and most readers are going to be able to distinguish it. We just need to make sure that we have the ability to get a single line across the code. So if that's doable, then a reader can read the code. And then when we look at the actual information piece, you have those narrow bars that we talked about. We want to make sure that they're about the same size as the most narrow space. Otherwise, we start to get that code down here that we saw that was overprinted. And then you're going to have a quiet zone. And this is going to be one of the most important things on any of these codes, is you have to have some type of quiet zone on either side so that when the piece of automation equipment, the digital image that's ultimately extracted from here, which will be a waveform, has a starting and stopping. So we know when to read it. If you just had a sentence without periods, without spacing, without paragraphs, it's going to be much harder to read. Especially if we take it, and we'll look on some pictures later, of an extreme case where we have a very busy part on a busy background and trying to understand where the code actually exists in there. If I'm a computer and I look at that, with AI and things like that our brain is doing, we may see that there's a code right in the middle of that page. But if we're running our cursor along this word, narrow bar width, or symbol height, and then we keep going across this code, that waveform is not going to look any different across symbol height than it does on the code. It's still going from dark to light, going from dark to light, and then it's going to go more from dark to light to dark to light. So we have to have that space so that the encoding can understand the differences. And we'll go over how that actually works a little bit later. So any questions on 1D codes here? So this would be our first, kind of what codes came out as the very basic Morse code type code.